All right, everybody. Hopefully, you can see us on our YouTube channel right now. I'm Samuel Singer, the founder and executive director of Wyoming Stargazing. And with us this bright, sunny afternoon in Jackson, Wyoming, coming live from South Africa is Ben Coley, the founder and owner of Celestial Events South Africa. Ben, thanks so much for being with us.
Pleasure. Thanks very much for having me back on, Samuel. It's
Yeah,
been too long.
it
Definitely, there's
has
been quite a lot of things going on over the last year or so. But yeah, delighted to be back. I know it's a bit strange for you guys, 12 o'clock. It's just gone 8 o'clock here, and we are in the middle of winter. So as you can see, I'm wrapped up for the evening. Although I have to say, it's a lot warmer tonight than it has been. I can't see my own breath yet, which is a good thing.
been. Oh, the colder it is, the better it is for astronomy, right?
Absolutely, yeah, especially for photography. So yeah, it's been a fantastic few weeks for that. Actually, the summer weather has been, so our winter weather rather, has been more unstable than usual. We have had a little bit of rain, which we wouldn't expect, but the last week or so has been beautiful, clear skies. And yeah, well, the moon phase has been perfect. So I've been busying myself out here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure everyone is excited to hear a little bit about your operation down there and the telescope and camera setup that you're going to be using to project some more or less real-time images of southern hemisphere objects to us. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, and you can share your screen and tell us a little bit about what to expect.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. Yeah, let me just share the screen. Give me 2 secs. Okay, there we go.
That you're going to be
All right, so
using.
I think I've disappeared, but hopefully you guys can see that. So yeah, so my name is Ben Coley and I run Celestial Events South Africa. Thank you, Samuel, for the introduction there. So just a bit of background to myself. I have been a safari guide for about 15 years out here, having come from England originally, but I've always had a fascination with the night sky. And as I'm sure you could imagine, above the game reserves in South Africa, where there is very minimal light pollution, we're privy to some fantastic skies out here. It's perfect moon phase at the moment. And of course, being in the Southern Hemisphere, hopefully I'm going to show you some objects that you physically cannot see from your latitude, way up there in the north of North America. So I wanted to sort of first start by giving you an idea of where exactly I am. So since we last spoke, actually, Samuel, I've moved. I was in a place called Nelspruit, which you can just see on the map below the red dot there. You can see Mbombela, which is the new name for Nelspruit. That's where the last few evenings we've done, I've streamed live from, but I've moved a little bit further north over the last year to an area called Hoedspruit, which is kind of slap bang on the doorstep of the Kruger National Park itself. So I've got game reserves sort of all around me. It's darker skies up here. It's a lot quieter. And it's the perfect place for what I do with tourism. So going to the safari lodges and with the telescope and other equipment and doing photography training, astrophotography training, doing what I call the night sky safaris. And I also do a lot of guide training with the local safari guides out here in order to try and help them to be able to give really interesting evenings to their guests. Obviously, that we focus a little bit more on the mythology and things because most lodges don't have access to a telescope. But it's going really well. I've actually just come back from Namibia, had a few days out there, even though it was incredibly windy. But obviously fantastic dark skies down in the Sossusvlei area. And then just on the right, to give you a little bit of a better idea, you can see the Tropical Capricorn there. The Tropical Capricorn is probably only about 200 kilometers north of where I'm sitting, if that, maybe 150 kilometers. So very close to the Tropic of Capricorn. And you can see my GPS coordinates on the screen there to give you a bit of idea of what we're going to have a look at. So as Samuel said, I've got a telescope set up in the garden behind me, and I'm doing this all remotely. This is all quite new. I recently got some new toys and some new equipment, including the incredible ASI Air Plus and some designated astrophotography equipment. So, before I get that, I just wanted to show you the southern sky. Sorry, so, I'm obviously not quite sure exactly how much of the sky of this area of the sky you can see from your latitude. But we're going to be focusing our attention sort of more in the middle of this screenshot here of the constellation. So you can see Scorpius slap bang in the middle. And if you look at the tail of the Scorpion there to the left, we've got obviously Sagittarius. And if you go to the right, you can see a couple of bright stars there, which is Alpha and Beta Centauri, or Rigel Kentaurus and Hadar on the Southern Cross, and Centaurus. That's the sort of area that we're going to be concentrating in this evening. So that area of the Milky Way around the Southern Cross, which you will not be able to see. And there are some incredible objects to be viewed up there, which hopefully will give you some live images of. Just if you need a little bit of help with visualizing where everything is, there you go. You can see the overlay now. This is just screenshots from Stellarium, which is a brilliant program. And you can see Centaurus just to the right of center, and Scorpius, Ophiuchus, and those areas down toward the south, which you won't know. But we're going to focus our attention sort of between Scorpio and Carina there, and Vela on the right. Okay, and in terms of the new equipment, this is all of my new stuff that I've got. So you can see on the left is what it sort of looks like now set up in the garden. So I've got a much smaller scope. The last time I did this with you, it was a 10-inch Meade Smith Cassegrain LX200, which I still have, which I used for my visual evenings, but I treated myself over Christmas and bought lots of kits with lots of wires and a very, very steep learning curve, but we are getting there slowly. So I've got a William Optics Gran Turismo 71, or a GT71, which I have to say is absolutely spectacular in what it can do. And then I also treated myself to an off-axis guider. And then I'm using my planetary camera, my ZWO 290MC as a guide camera, which is not ideal because it's not quite sensitive enough, but it still seems to be doing a good job. I'll upgrade at some point. And then I also got a designated astrophotography camera, which is the ZWO 533 color camera there. And also a very, very expensive and tiny piece of glass, the Optolong L-Extreme filter, which I have to say is my new best friend. I have been utterly blown away with the difference that this filter makes. Anybody who's not too aware of what these do, these are specifically designed to block out most wavelengths of light and just let through the particular wavelengths of things like hydrogen alpha and O3 that are very prominent in a lot of the areas of nebulosity. So this has been unbelievable in bringing out a whole load of detail and color that I was just not able to get with the DSLR camera. And you can see on the top of the scope there on the left, that little red box, that's the ASI Air Plus, which controls everything. It means I can control the telescope, hopefully from the tablet here whilst I'm sitting and talking to you, and tell it exactly what to do. I still get very paranoid. I don't trust it yet because it moves around on its own, and I will probably have to rush and just go and check up on it every now and again. But I've been very, very happy with what it does so far, and it gives off a Wi-Fi signal, and we'll be able to stream you the live images through the tablet here.
Very cool.
Okay, so the first one I'm going to start with, I actually wanted to, I'd normally do this one a bit later because it's one of the showstoppers in the southern sky, the Carina Nebula NGC 3372. But just because of the lay of the land here and what my visibility is like, we need to do this one first because I'm going to lose it behind a tree shortly. But just to give you a little sort of a bit of introduction, Eta Carina is like the Orion Nebula on steroids. It's a massive area of star formation. In the Milky Way, you can see there on the left of the screen, you can see the Southern Cross with the 4 stars sort of brightened up, and that pink patch on the right is that Eta Carina Nebula, or the Carina Nebula containing, of course, the very famous and massively bright star Eta Carina somewhere within its midst there. So these photos were both taken with long exposures with a Nikon mirrorless camera, and you can even see how that beautiful pink color of the ionized hydrogen comes through on a standard camera sensor. So in terms of size, we're going to be looking at something, well, it's pretty massive. It's over 300 light years across, well, we're never quite sure exactly how far away it is because it spans a huge amount of space, but generally we seem to think it'll be about 7,500 light years away. And it was actually, it's a good one down here because it was discovered from South Africa by Nicholas de Lacaille in 1752 from his observatory close to Table Mountain. So without further ado, I'm going to share with you the live screen. Now I've taken a photograph already, obviously, before we've started. Samuel, can you see that all right?
We can, yeah, it looks great, Ben.
Fantastic. All right, so that was a 60-second exposure, so I'm just going to let it run, do a 2-minute exposure, but we can have a look at this one whilst we are waiting for that to take the picture. We just brighten it up a little bit. So you can see this huge area of dust and gas nestled in the bosom of the Milky Way up there. It's about 4 times bigger than the Orion Nebula and 6 times further away, but it's still plainly visible with the naked eye on a dark night. You can see a hazy patch very close to what's known as the Diamond Cross. Actually, we have the Southern Cross and then the Diamond Cross and the False Cross all next to one another, and this is very close to the Diamond Cross. But as you saw from that previous photograph there, easy enough to find if you can find the Southern Cross. And if we zoom in and have a look, you can start seeing some of that detail. We'll get more detail in a minute with a much longer exposure. But that star there in the center of the screen now, that is the famed Eta Carina. And next to it is the Keyhole Nebula, as it's known. You can see how those sort of dark patches where the gas has become very, very thick and opaque have formed this little picture of a keyhole. And of course, there's lots and lots of star formation going on in here, and you can see all of that bright gas being lit up by all the energy of those young stars. You can see there's a bunch of little young stars in and around Eta Carina itself, and then off to the right, top right of the screen there as well. Those are a couple of the Trumpler clusters, which contain some Wolf-Rayet stars and some of the brightest in the entire Milky Way, as far as we know. Eta Carina itself as a star is very, very interesting. Some of you may or may not know the history behind it. It is visible to the naked eye at the moment if you know where to look, but it's such an enormous star that it's had some catastrophic past. And back in the sort of 1850s, there or thereabouts, 1870s, it actually became the second brightest star in the sky, so brighter even than Canopus, which is also in the same constellation of Carina. Okay, it should just be loading a slightly more detailed picture now. There we go, a little bit more brightness.
Yeah, that's great. Lovely.
Okay, so yeah, back in the 1840s, 1850s, this became the second brightest star in the sky, and it's what we consider a hypergiant star. So it's enormous and very, very hot. Estimates suggest that it's burning between 4 and 5 million times brighter than our sun, and is considered one of the biggest and brightest stars in the entire galaxy. But so it was, now it's barely visible to the naked eye, but 150 years ago, it's the second brightest star in the sky. And it's actually a very sort of tumultuous past that this star has got. So what we think from models of it has actually happened is that there was a triple star system, 2 of which interacted and 1 got sort of kicked out, and then the third one spiraled in and merged with the remaining star at the center. And it was that merger that created this enormous burst of energy, gave off as much light as a supernova, but yet somehow didn't destroy the star. And then from that, so that's why it became the second brightest star in the sky for quite some period of time. And then it slowly started to disappear from view to the point where it completely disappeared from naked eye observation or visibility, because all that dust and gas that was thrown off it from this cataclysmic sort of merger, I suppose, if you want to call it that, completely blocked out the light. And now the star is slowly brightening again as that sort of shockwave of all of the dust and gas that it ejected is beginning to clear. So it's a pretty remarkable feat that it didn't blast itself into oblivion, but it is one of those stars that we hope might, or say hope, but suggest might go supernova at some point in the relatively near future.
Next million years or so.
Yeah, you know, maybe. Well, of course, if it was a few thousand years ago, we have a chance of seeing it. 7,500 years ago, light years away. It still messes with my mind to think that we're looking at what it looks like 7,500 years ago, not what it looks like today, because it's going to take that long for all the light to get here. But there are some really amazing features, and just this little sort of single 2-minute image, you can really see some of these beautiful detail in the tendrils of the dust and gas, and these sort of lanes that have been carved in there by all the energy from all of these young stars. I think there's, well over a few thousand baby stars in here, giving off lots and lots of ultraviolet light, which are sculpting and energizing this hydrogen. So the reason we're seeing this pinky red color is that when hydrogen is excited by a young star and then sort of relaxes, it gives off a specific wavelength of light, which is the sort of pinky red hue, and that's very typical of hydrogen. And wherever you find hydrogen and the right conditions, you get star formation. So this is one of the jewels of the southern hemisphere in terms of star forming regions. It really is quite spectacular. And there's all sorts of other stuff going on in there. The Vista infrared telescope I discovered recently had a good look at this area and discovered more than 5 million sources of infrared light within the Carina Nebula. So, on the assumption that things give off infrared light are young stars that maybe haven't quite started fusing yet, or who knows, maybe even some exoplanets or things, but there's an awful lot going on in this area of sky.
Ben, you'd mentioned the baby stars in there, and specifically the baby stars around where Eta Carina was. And I I know that you already knew that those were baby stars, but I think one of the really interesting things about this image that everyone's seeing is that you can visually see the difference between the way Eta Carina looks and the way all those other stars look, and immediately know that there's something different about those two different types of stars. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, so obviously I don't have enough focal length here. This Williams Optic GT71, I've even got a focal reducer to back off a little bit because a lot of these objects are a lot bigger. But if we look at some sort of Hubble images of Eta Carina, the star itself, that star is, as you said, it's kind of surrounded, looks like by a fuzzy shroud, and that's not too incorrect in saying, because when this massive merger happened, these two, the best way to describe it, I suppose, is lobes of debris or dust and gas were blasted off it. And it's kind of encapsulated this star in this gaseous bubble, if you like, which is why it almost looks like it's a little bit out of focus there, but it's you can see it's a hazy, very large object as opposed to the nice compact stars next to it, as you said. And that is what is known as the Homunculus Nebula. I've actually got a photo of it. Let me just share that screen with you.
And we could also see just the difference in the color of those stars too, which I think is really interesting.
There we go, back there. Yeah, I suppose you're just picking up that more sort of, there's a little bit of a green hue on my screen, I've noticed. My calibration is not perfect, but yeah, you can certainly see that there's more of a sort of a whitish blue rather than the yellowy color, which you would expect from young, hot, bright stars. And so some of those bright stars in those star clusters surrounding Eta Carina and just off to the right, the other side of the keyhole there, those say Trumpler 14 and Trumpler 16, they're known as I said, contain some of the brightest stars, as well as Eta Carina, millions of times brighter than the sun, containing hundreds, well, 100 times perhaps more solar masses than our own sun. So yeah, some pretty big boys up there.
Yeah, I know that this color concept of stars is sometimes confusing for folks, because usually when we think of hot, we think of like red, fire, but the color spectrum tells us something different. It's the bluish white stars that are actually the hottest stars. So these young baby stars that are being born out of these nebulas are the ones that are actually burning the hottest, giving off this pronounced white bluish light. Whereas the star that we're calling Eta Carina, that big fuzzy orange one, is actually burning at a cooler temperature because it's aged.
Yeah, exactly. I always describe it to people. So we're going to go in for a 3-minute image. I'm not sure. We'll see how well the guide camera is working. You can see it looks relatively stable at the moment. I was actually taking some 5-minute images earlier and getting quite good results. This new equipment is just blowing me away. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But yes, with regard to it's my new toys. With regard to the color, yeah, the easiest way I find to describe it to somebody is sort of using a Bunsen burner at school or an acetylene torch. When you've got it on its lowest setting, you have that sort of orange, fairly loose flame. And then when you crank it up, you get the blue, which is what you're going to use when you're actually really severely heating stuff up, or an electric stove as it heats up as well. But I agree, it's kind of counterintuitive because of, thanks to taps, we tend to consider red as hot and blue as cold.
Right.
Oops, sorry, press the wrong button. I just want to go back to that presentation. So I've got a couple of shots. So that picture on the left was a proper photograph that I've taken and edited of the nebula. Those, I think, were also 2-minute exposures, but I took about 30 or 50 of them, and then some dark frames to reduce the noise, and obviously edited it through Photoshop. And you can really now see all the detail. And I think it's incredible when you actually really look at this, how much all those sort of tendrils and those mishmashes of dust and gas. And I love the fact that up in the top right hand corner you can see like a witch's head.
Yes. Yeah.
There's some interesting other features that I'm discovering.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that this was 300 light years across. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where that figure starts from, whether that is the entire nebula or whether it is just the sort of the core around Eta Carina. It's very difficult to find out for sure, but it's a massive object. So, I mean, you can easily take this just with a 200mm lens, without any sort of magnification, and it'll fill most of the screen. To give you an idea in terms of focal length, the picture on the right was actually taken with the 10-inch Meade LX200 and a crop sensor Nikon DSLR, just to give you an idea. So that is Eta Carina on the right, and that keyhole nebula, and you can see the difference that this optolong filter makes in terms of seeing all the other dust and the gas, particularly the hydrogen surrounding this area.
Yeah. And so
but I had
oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just going to say that this was a close-up view that is 10 light years across, and that you can see the keyhole nebula on the left-hand side of the screen, and this is a Hubble image, which is obviously very, very much zoomed in. So that gives you a bit of an idea that I suppose you could probably argue then, if this whole screen is 10 light years across, that keyhole nebula is maybe about 2 or 3 light years in length.
Right. Yeah, so to put that in perspective, the gravitational boundary of our solar system is about a light year in diameter. So all these clouds of gas are many times larger than our solar system, and perhaps the entire Carina Nebula at 300 light years in diameter is 300 times the size of our solar system.
It defies belief, eh?
Yeah, it really does.
But I've got this. I think if I remember rightly, Samuel, you said you've got a model of this, but a while ago, where we were talking about Eta Carina and that homunculus nebula, we've actually done sort of a 3-dimensional 3D print of what we think those lobes of gas look like around it. That on the left is what it actually looks like through Hubble. So now you can really see those great big bursts of energy coming off in 2 lobes from the star, and on the right there is a bit of a scenario of what we think happened. So A and B, you can see we're interacting with C orbiting at a much greater distance. Then A and B started to exchange mass. A got ejected. That caused C to spiral inwards and is either orbiting very, very close to, but as far as I know, has potentially collided with Eta Carina itself now, and that's what caused that massive outburst.
And these are basically just kind of like stellar bursts, right? This isn't the supernova that we're expecting to happen sometime in the future.
Yeah, again, as I understand it, this was just it was an almighty crash, basically a head-on collision. But according to scientific records from that time, it was suggested that the amount of light energy, if that's the right word, or light radiation that it gave off rivaled a sort of a classic supernova. That's why everybody thought that is what they were watching. And then lo and behold, the star somehow survived. I'm trying to remember the statistics now, but I think they said that in one day it loses the entire mass of our sun, that it's blasting off into space, and is still doing so today, I think. I mean, it was only 150 years ago, astronomically speaking, as a blink of an eye. So
yeah, very, very cool.
So,
well,
yeah,
I'm certainly one of those people.
Stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those folks who is hopeful that Eta Carina will indeed go supernova in our lifetime, or at least will have gone supernova 7,500 years ago, so we actually see it in our lifetime. And
I haven't decided if I want to see it or not, because whilst it would be amazing to see, it's going to make the sky so bright for a very long period of time. I mean, they claimed that with the last supernova that we had, was it back in the 1600s or so, that it was bright enough or gave off the same amount of light as a full moon, and it was so bright that it was visible during the daytime for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's going to make viewing, but with my new filters, I suppose I don't care anymore. Yeah, it's going to make the sky a lot lighter. When we have a full moon at the same time as one of those, then geez, we'll be able to, we won't even need lights on our car.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, the same thing when Betelgeuse or
Mm.
if Antares goes supernova up here in the northern hemisphere. We're talking about having, the equivalent of two full moons up in the
Wow.
sky for a month or so. So a very different sky for a short period of time, but what a show that will be.
I really hope. Well, we're long overdue. So the statistics suggest it's one supernova per galaxy per 100 years, and we haven't had one since the 1600s. So we
There you
are
go.
long overdue. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe we get lucky. And there is always that excitement. It's a bit like what I do with Safari. Actually, you never know what you're going to find around the next corner, and we might just find that it happens one night because we won't know if it's already happened until we see it.
Right.
So we live in
This will
hope.
be like this will be like seeing the big five all around one corner, like all interacting together, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they're all sort of standing on each other's shoulders, or yeah,
In a pyramid.
exactly. Yeah, tossing each other around from top to bottom. Yeah.
With a monkey on top juggling.
Absolutely. Well, of course, absolutely, just to top it all off. Indeed.
Well, I won't
But
hold my
this,
breath, but I'm hopeful.
well, let's see. Oh, we've got the 3 minute images back, so we've got a little bit more detail there. I'll just see if I can dull it down a little bit. So I've got this sort of strange green hue on the screen here, but that doesn't really matter. You can
Yeah,
fairly clearly see all the detail in there, and the scope is obviously tracking nicely. You can see a
it's
3 minute exposure,
fantastic.
and there's
Yeah, yeah,
very little movement in those stars at all.
very cool.
Um,
And remind me
so
again,
I thought
what's the diameter of the scope you're using for this?
it's a GT71, so it's only 7 and a bit centimeters across. So it's about a
Wow.
3.5 inch
Yeah,
diameter, but it's incredible. It's in terms of F ratio, it is a refractor, so it's designed for photography. It's an APO triplet.
yeah.
And I think the f-stop with the focal reducer, it's down to about 3.2, 3.5.
Wow. That's fantastic. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, it's a little bit different from the what I was doing with the DSLRs a year or so ago, that's for sure. But it's a
Yeah,
steep learning curve. It's probably taken me 3 months to get everything talking to each other and figuring out, because every sort of scope and the way that the ASI Air connects to scopes is different. So YouTube has very much been my friend, and I have to say there are some great people who have helped me along the way as well, just to figure out. I only got the guide camera working probably about a month ago, and I had big issues with trying to focus it and had to order a specific part because there's a lot of hidden things that you need to get that you don't realize.
yeah.
But I
So I
thought for
just
the
want to,
next subject, Damesh,
yeah,
sorry, go
show
on.
us what you got. No, no, please go for it.
Well, I thought for the next object, there's another part of Etacarina that isn't in view here because it spans over such a large area. As far as I know, it is still associated with Etacarina, and it's a little one. I don't remember, Samuel, when we did this last time. I think I showed you a photograph that I tried to take of it, and I only had 3 frames to stack at the time because I was just playing around. So I'm going to sneeze. Hold on a second if I get quiet.
No worries.
No, I think it was a false alarm for now.
Whenever you
Um,
talk about it,
uh,
that's it.
yeah, exactly. But there is another nebula, and it's called a very strange name. It's geez, what's the name? NGC 3324 is the code, and it's known as the Gabriela Mistral Nebula. And
Ah,
as far as I know,
yes,
it's
yes.
considered a part of the Carina Nebula, and it's also a little area of dust and gas in association with this nebula that has been sort of sculpted again by some young stars in the center, and they've blasted out and created this sort of little cocoon within which they are residing. And the shape looks strangely, this is where the name comes from, just like this lady here on the left, who is Gabriela Mistral. You can just see in the picture on the right, you can just see it up there in the top left, that little bubble close to the top left-hand corner. That is the Gabriela Mistral Nebula. This was a 4-panel mosaic that I did of that area, and I just inadvertently managed to capture it on the edge there. But yeah, so it's all part of it. So I thought we'd have a crack at that. But this lady she was a Nobel Prize winner of literature from Chile back in 1945. Quite how she got or who drew the parallel between her and the fact that there's a nebula in the sky that looks like her, I really don't know. But we'll see if we can't give you a picture of that. So now, hopefully,
I did a
if
little
everything.
research on that actually, Ben.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so an astronomer whose name I can't remember right now, unfortunately, but he was a big fan of her poetry. And when he was coming up with common names, he named that object after her, and it stuck. And so it was really as simple as that. It was just a poetic fan in the astronomical community.
You did well, because I also have tried to research that, but I haven't really been able to find anything except a little bit of life history of the lady in question. I couldn't find the link between the two. I don't know if you know who it was by any
I, you
chance.
know, I saved the search that I did. I'll dig it up and share it with you. I can't remember the astronomer's name, but yeah, the story is as simple as that. He liked her poetry,
Hmm.
somehow recognized her the silhouette of her face, and
Yeah.
and then named it after her, and it stuck. I guess people liked it. So
Well, hopefully you'll see. I'll show you the picture that we're going to get of it, and then I do have a better picture of it, which hopefully illustrates it more. But I thought we'd try and do it old school first. So I'm going to go for a 3-minute image because it's a little bit fainter. So I just want to make sure that we do get sufficient detail. But yeah, I can't really tell you too much about the object itself, other than it's kind of one of my favorite objects out here. And again, I would have mentioned this last time we had a very basic look at this object, because this was the first time that I kind of pointed towards the telescope towards something that I had no idea, never heard of it. You can see nothing at all through the eyepiece. You can see it here from just the very quick preview that there's a little cluster of stars up here, which is next door to it. That's NGC 3293, a little star cluster, and the nebula is just sort of at about 4 o'clock to that, which hopefully we'll see an image of in a minute. But this was the first time that I kind of trusted an astronomy map and trusted my telescope to be accurate, and just said, okay, well, apparently there's something here. Let's take a photograph of it and see what you get. And sure enough, there was something there. So this is quite I consider this quite a special object to me, because it kind of personifies my, I guess, sort of search into the unknown.
nice. And so it's part of the larger Carina Nebula complex. So it's at least partly part of the emission nebula there. But I think the edge of it, where we get the profile of the face, is a dark nebula, or is it something else?
As I understand it, it's sort of all that hydrogen has been compressed. So I suppose it is a bit of a dark nebula. The line around the outside, it's because
Yeah.
there's some young stars, again being an emission nebula. There's baby stars inside that are glowing hot and bright, particularly in the ultraviolet spectrum, which is blasting away the dust around it, and it's sort of eroding the gas around it and almost causing, I suppose, shock waves that are building up on each other towards the boundaries of their sphere of influence, I suppose, is one way of putting it. So as I understand it, it's just sort of where the gas is becoming denser. So I suppose you could call it a dark nebula in that regard. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. What you describe, I think, is a little bit different than like the traditional definition of a dark nebula, where there's actually foreground dust and
Mm.
gas that's blocking the light coming from behind. But maybe this is something a little
Yeah,
bit different.
perhaps.
I know there are some dark nebulas within the Carina Nebula.
Oh,
Um,
there's lots. Yeah, there's some very famous ones as well, which obviously you can have a look at the Hubble images, but there's a very famous area called the Mystic Mountain,
yeah,
which we don't have enough zoom to get. But yeah, lots of these sort of Bok globules, as they're known, these darker
right.
spots where, as you said, where the dust and gas has become so opaque and so tightly packed that potentially that is where star formation is beginning under those conditions.
All right. Well, here comes that image. It's cool to be
All
able to
right.
watch the countdown timer on your screen.
Yeah, it's all very dramatic, isn't it? There we
Oh
go.
yeah, there we go.
So there
Yeah,
you
there
go. So
she
you can
is.
see
Look at
the
that.
profile of her forehead and the nose sticking out in the middle, and a bit of a jink in where the mouth would be. So
Yeah,
yeah, very cool.
I don't know if folks can see my mouse right now, but I'm kind of outlining the face. So this is the forehead right here. And Ben, can you see my mouse?
I can't on my screen, no.
Yeah, I guess because you're sharing, but maybe the folks on
Yeah.
watching live can see it. But yeah, the kind of the kind of crescent moon shape at the top is the forehead, and there's a little bulge that's the nose, just below a prominent star right at the edge, and then down below you can kind of see some pursed lips, and then kind of a chin down below that. Um,
I'll show you. I've got a better photograph of it, so you can see that there's her profile there, which you can kind of maybe if I put them on at the same time, you can kind of see the similarity. But I'm pretty sure I've put. Yeah, there you go. So there's
oh,
a
there it is.
proper
Yeah, that's
image of
lovely.
it, and now you can much more clearly see, particularly that boundary line. Obviously, this is taken with a mono camera where you can specify different colors for channels, which
Right.
I've fiddled with, but it's much more difficult to do with a color camera. But obviously, this is 3 times, 4 times as much work in terms of time. But yeah, it's brilliant. It really is perfect. I mean, if you zoom in there on the right, you could clearly see that it really does look like her as well. It wasn't just a whim.
Yeah, it's I don't see the eyebrows. That's what I that's what I'm missing.
Well, maybe she recently developed, what is it, alopecia or whatever it is, or maybe she lost it.
And you
But yeah,
always
so
have to
that is.
get a little creative when you're looking at astronomical objects with their given names, whether it be constellations or deep space
Absolutely.
objects. There's always a bit of artistic liberty taken there.
Yeah, but so that this is one of my favorite objects, as I said, just because of the history behind it. This was the first of those objects that really sort of made me realize there's a whole lot more stuff up there. And there's that little star cluster you can see there just above her as well.
Yeah.
That's around about 8,000 light years away. Um, yeah, I think there's a bit of debate as to the age of those stars somewhere, but I think the younger ones are about 6 million years old. The older ones about 20 million years old. Whether or not they came from that nebula, that I couldn't tell you. I wasn't able to find that out. But just along the line of the Milky Way in this area, there's so much to see that you find these clusters all over the place. I mean, this one's not even mentioned if you go on to Sky Safari, which is the app that I use. They don't even record this cluster.
Hmm.
So there's all sorts of interesting stuff. And you can see on the wide angle field here, you can see the tendrils of Eta Carina. You can see how it is sort of associated. The gases are bleeding together.
Yeah. Very cool.
Very nice. All right. Well, and then the next one I wanted to do, which I haven't actually tried doing it live, so I'll have to see how it works. But I'm sure you're aware of it, but perhaps to other viewers they are not. There is a very, very cool area of dust and gas, which I've recently discovered, an H2 region, another area of star formation, and it is fittingly called the Statue of Liberty Nebula. And
Oh,
since it
wow.
is the 3rd of July today, I think it would be prudent to have a quick look at it. Now,
Indeed.
obviously, I'd like to have done this last, but again, with the positioning of where everything is, I think we need to do it before in case it disappears. So NGC 3576, it's not a very well-known object in that regard. Let's make sure I'm looking at the right thing. It should be. It looks quite low. So I'm just listening intently to the telescope moving on its own. I'm just going to go and check it quickly. I still get paranoid that it moves without me watching it.
Oh yeah, the cord wrap is always a worry.
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, it seems to be doing something. So let's have a look.
Yeah. It's great that you've got all this integrated on a one program so we can actually get a little digital read of the scope moving and then the exposure being taken.
Yeah, well, I think this adds such an interesting opportunity in terms of really truly seeing things live, because as you know yourself, when you're looking, I mean, there's no way I could show you this object, for example, through the telescope, because you cannot physically see it. It's a very faint area of sky, and you need these special filters in order to pick it up. So I've just got the guide camera up and running. Let's try for a 3-minute exposure. So there isn't a great deal I can really tell you about this object. I have tried to research it, obviously, because it's an important object for today, being the Statue of Liberty Nebula. But there is not much information about it. It is an area of star formation. Again, you'll see when the image comes up that we've got that classic sort of red glow, and from all the hydrogen that's being ionized. It's very far away. It's around about 9,000 light years away, so it's quite far. I've just realized I've got this on here as well, so I can show you what we're looking at. Just zoom out a bit. So there's Eta Carina. So you can see that's where we were looking over here. And the Gabriela Mistral Nebula, I think, was this one here. And we've just moved slightly further west to the Statue of Liberty Nebula. And this is what we'll look at next, which is rather amusingly known as the Running Chicken Nebula. Although I'm still struggling to see any form of running chicken in the shape of it. But as you said, it's a bit of artistic license. But that's the area we're going to go for now with the Statue of Liberty.
Cool.
And I have to say, I took my first pictures of it when I was out in Namibia 2 weeks ago. I took my first pictures of it. I only took about 23-minute exposures and did a quick edit. But I'm quite happy with what I came out with. Obviously, normally I'd be trying to amass 3 or 4 hours worth of data to drag out all the detail in it. But I think for just an hour's worth of data or whatever I got, I think I did rather well. So we'll see what it looks like here, and then I'll show you the edited version as well, because I'm not sure how much detail we'll see here, but we'll give it a crack.
Cool. And I'm just noticing the time. We're both talkers, Ben. We're pretty good at that. Especially
are we running out of time?
Well, we're at about 12:45. So I was thinking maybe after this object, maybe we take a look at a globular cluster and then see if we can snag a galaxy before we go.
Yeah, for sure. I did do a quick check. I've got M83 we should be able to get, which is the Southern Whirlpool Galaxy, or Southern Pinwheel Galaxy. Sorry, I should say. It's quite similar to your Whirlpool Galaxy. It's a face-on spiral, but obviously I've only got a smaller. Sure, my guide camera is struggling a bit. Haven't got much focal length, but I did have a look at it earlier, and we can pick up some detail. Nice. So yeah, let's see what we get here, and then we'll definitely have a look at Omega Centauri. Nice. And then if we've got time, I'd love to show you the Dragons of Ara, because that's my next favorite.
Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, that'd be a fun one to end on, I think.
Yeah, all right, we'll do that. We'll do this Omega Centauri and then the Dragons. And then if we've got time, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I could show you.
I mean, we could do this all night, Ben.
Well, we could, yeah.
And we'll
let's see what we've got. Okay, here we go. There we go. There you go. Can you see the Statue of Liberty there?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see like the torch, right?
Yeah. And you can see the sort of the plinths that she's standing on, and you can see those beautiful sort of lobes or rings around where the torch would be, and you can kind of see. So all the light part would be her body, and then the plinths and the underside would be the
I like it.
The statue itself. So you can kind of see that it does very much look like a Statue of Liberty. I'll show you the sort of the picture I've taken and a close up that I found online as well. There we go. So if you want to see just where the square is where we are again. So Eta Carina at the bottom and the Running Man Nebula there on the left, and it's in between the two. Okay, so on the left, that's the one that I took. You can see it's quite noisy, but you can see a close up
there she is. Look at that
image on the right. I think it's brilliant. It looks just like the Statue of Liberty. It's amazing what's up there.
It is pretty cool. Very nice. Well, thank you for
so happy 4th of July tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's do the globular cluster, because we are very fortunate down here in the southern celestial sphere. We've got 4 of the 5 brightest globular clusters in the sky, and I shall show you 5139, the biggest and brightest of the lot, which is known as Omega Centauri. And believe it or not, well, for those of you who don't know what a globular cluster is, these are, I like to call them stellar old age homes. So they generally hang out sort of quite far away from the line of the Milky Way. They're more in the galactic halo, so above and below the line of the Milky Way of the spiral arms. And they're pretty much chilling out there in isolation. And there's not that many up in the sky. I think there's about somewhere between 150 and 200 only that have been found in our galaxy. And so very, 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 very old stars far and very far away. So this object is around about 17,000 light years away, which is double what we've been looking at thus far. Let me just make sure that's working. Come on, guide camera. Not the end of the world. And yeah, so most of instead of open clusters, which we've talked about, like that little one just north of the Gabriela Mistral nebula that we were looking at, open clusters are the baby stars that leave their little stellar embryo together and then slowly fan out and go off on their own little celestial journeys. Whereas this is the old age home of star clusters. So there's usually, instead of only a few hundred, there's usually a few thousand, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. And this object in particular is the biggest and largest globular cluster of its kind up in the sky, and it's estimated to contain as many as 10 million individual stars in one area of sky, which is pretty amazing, I think.
It's like a little miniature galaxy.
It is. I'm just trying to think. There we go. So obviously we won't get this level of detail, but just while we're waiting, there's again a proper professional photograph of it on the left, and you can just see how tightly packed those objects are. And it's in the constellation of Centaurus. If you look on the right, you can see the Southern Cross towards the bottom right hand corner, and you can see Omega Centauri just right and above center. It's bright enough to be able to be seen with the naked eye. You can pick it out as a hazy patch, hence the name Omega Centauri, because when the Greeks were naming it, they thought it was a very faint star, so they gave it the designation Omega, being the last letter of the Greek alphabet, because it was very faint. And then obviously when people looked through a telescope, they discovered that there was an awful lot more going on than they realized. So let's have a look. Hopefully we've got something coming. Oh, it's a little bit blurry. I see my guiding's all over the place.
Yeah, a little guiding issue on that one.
So I'm just going to turn the guiding off, and we'll just take a 60-second exposure whilst we look. But you can see that even though that's we've had a bit of a blip there, you can see that there's plenty of stars in that area of sky. Let's go back to this picture for now. And what I think is incredible about Omega Centauri is that, say, there are lots of globular clusters, or well over 100 of them, and the majority of them are all around about the same size. They're all in the tens or low hundreds of thousands. The next biggest globular cluster after this one is about 500,000 stars, and yet this one is 10 million stars. So what makes this one so much bigger and so much brighter? And then also just looking at its general movement as well. Most things in our galaxy are following the same trajectory, because the galaxy is spinning and everything's caught up in that sort of vortex. But this object is actually moving against the grain. It's going in the wrong direction that we think that it should be going in. So it has been suggested that what we're actually looking at here, instead of a globular cluster that was formed within the boundaries of the Milky Way, is that this was actually the core of a small dwarf galaxy that at some point during the Milky Way's creation, or Milky Way's life, this galaxy got too close to us and our gravity sucked it in, and we expelled a bunch of stars, absorbed a bunch of stars, and what we're now looking at is basically the core of an alien galaxy. There we go. It seems to work a little bit better there. Not ideal, but I've just taken a much shorter exposure. But you can clearly see that sort of patch of light in the sky now. Yeah, so amazing to think that we're looking at a core of an alien galaxy that is even older than the Milky Way. Well, potentially older than the Milky Way. These stars have been dated at about 12.5 billion years old. So they really are some of the oldest stars that we know about. And even though we haven't got it in the detail here, but you can kind of see the overriding color, particularly in the periphery, as a sort of red color, suggesting these are old stars. And there are some young stars in there because they're so tightly packed. They say the distance between the stars right at the center, of which we believe there to be an intermediate sized black hole at the middle, which is holding everything together with its gravity. They're less than sort of 0.1 light years apart. So every now and again, they do smash into each other, and that kickstarts a new area of star formation. So we're very fortunate to be able to see this object.
Yeah, and this one, the image that we're seeing here is similar to what we can actually visually see through a telescope with our brightest globular cluster in the northern hemisphere, the Hercules globular cluster. Not quite as many stars, I think only a couple 100,000. But because it's so bright, you actually get to see something similar to this just looking through the eyepiece of the telescope. It's pretty remarkable.
Hmm.
Through a
Well,
big telescope,
this object,
one of our 20 inchers.
well, with my 10-inch telescope with a 36 mil eyepiece, which is the most wide angle that I've got, I mean, this pretty much fills the entire frame.
Yeah.
And whilst you can't see a huge amount of detail, it's quite faint, but on a moonless night, someone described it the other day, which I thought was a beautiful description, like a spider web in morning dew, just the way it
Yes.
sort of glitters there, because there's you can see there's lots and lots of stars there, but it's very difficult to pick them out individually. It's almost like glitter, looking at
Yeah.
glitter at the bottom of the glass or something. It's a pretty incredible object, and going back to that thing that it's believed to have come from outside of the Milky Way. I'm sure you're aware, but perhaps some of our viewers are not aware, that one of the closest stars to Earth is called Captain Star, and that's only about 12.5 light years from us, or from the sun. And because obviously we understand orbital dynamics very well, we've been able to backtrack the movement of Captain Star over however many millions of years. And it's actually believed that Captain Star, so one of our closest stars, actually originated from this object as well. So one of the closest stars to us is actually quite literally an alien star that probably started life in a different galaxy. And we found an exoplanet around that object as well. So
Very cool.
yeah, who knows what's living up there.
And what, this object is what, 20,000 light years away, Omega Centauri?
About 17,000, give or take a few thousand, I'm sure. But yeah, most literature suggests 17. I'm just taking a 2-minute exposure, so let's see if we get something a little bit better, a bit brighter. But I haven't got the guiding on because that seems to be having a bit of an issue. Okay, see a bit more brightness there. Yeah, clearly see that there's a huge concentration of stars up there. That whole thing takes up the size of around about a full moon.
Wow.
To give you an idea of scale there.
That's fantastic, Ben.
Yeah, very, very cool. We're very lucky to see that. It's always a go-to. And now, of course, with it being coming back into planetary season, I've got life is easy when I do my outreach evenings now. Omega Centauri, Jewel Box, I've got Saturn, I've got Jupiter coming soon. With all these nebula around at the moment, and when I do the virtual stuff with the camera hooked up to the scope like this, there's so much amazing stuff to look at, and it just blows people away what's actually up there.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, should we try for the dragons quickly, because that is one of my favorites?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And if we go a few minutes over, that's okay. I think it'd be fun to see a galaxy as well.
Oh yes, so let's do this and then I'll quickly do M83. Just while that's moving, I just want to check the position of M83 with relation to the trees and things. Hold on a sec.
Oh yeah, good call. While Ben's doing that, I'll just comment that it's such a treat to be sitting here in Jackson and seeing a clear blue sky with the occasional cloud pass by, and being able to see these amazing objects real time from the southern hemisphere where it's night. The technology we have just opens up the universe in such cool ways for us.
Okay, we should. So I'm back. We should be able to get a view of M83, but we're just trying for these dragons now. Actually, I took probably one of my favorite photos thus far. You can see from like a 2-second exposure, you can see nothing, but let's try 2 minutes. Actually, let me just see if I can get the guide camera working again. Yeah, I actually spent, what did I get? I think I got 3 hours of data on this object.
Nice.
And actually was able to put together what I think is quite a nice photograph. You can see my guide camera's got an issue where I cannot get it focused quite properly, but I'm not using really the correct camera for the job. But it works, but it's not ideal. But so earlier I was taking 5-minute exposure, so it's obviously doing something right. All right, let's try for a quick 2 minutes on the dragons of Ara. So this is another area of star formation, again, completely invisible to the naked eye. Even through a 10-inch telescope, you can see no evidence of any dust or gas there. But it's being illuminated, like most of these emission nebula, by a small open cluster, NGC 6193, and hopefully you'll be able to see that there are these sort of interlocking tendrils that almost look like somebody shaking hands, but it's known as the fighting dragons of Ara, because you've got these sort of opposing dark nebulae, if you want to call them that, sort of looks like they're interacting with one another. And at the bottom of the screen, hopefully we've got it in shot. Otherwise, I've got a couple of photographs of it. You can see the story goes that they're protecting their egg, which you'll see there's an object down in the bottom corner, which I actually thought was a planetary nebula. But when I looked at it in a little bit more detail and we did a little bit of research, it's actually more of an outburst, so a bit like a baby version of what we were talking about with Eta Carina. So it's not a planetary nebula, it's just another big star that had let's call it a celestial burp, as you said, and it's thrown off this gas, and you can actually see there's like a shock wave around it. It's very, very cool. Okay. It's all right, a lot of tension. Hey, 30 seconds and counting.
So what program are we using here, Ben?
Well, this is all sort of comes as standard with the ASI Air Pro. So this is the app that I'm using with it, and it's connected. I'm connected to it. Well, it's connected to the house Wi-Fi, and I'm connected to that. So I'm doing all this real time, and so controlling the mount and everything through here. And the guiding system, as I understand it, is very similar to the PhD 2 guiding system that most people use. You see, it's definitely got an issue. We're getting some spikes there, but hopefully we've got something. Oh, there we go. Okay, well, so we're sort of sideways on. But so I can't rotate the image, unfortunately, but if you could imagine it, we rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, you can see those two almost like sort of tendrils or hands of dark nebulae almost sort of touching one another, and we actually didn't quite get the egg. The egg's just off the bottom of the screen somewhere.
Right.
These interacting dragons.
That's pretty amazing, though, for just a two-minute exposure.
Yeah, this filter is incredible what it can do. But let me show you a proper picture of it. There you go.
Oh yeah.
So there on the left, so that's probably my best image to date. So it was about 3 hours of exposure, and you can clearly see how those dragons are supposedly fighting in there. And down there on the bottom right, and I obviously found somebody else's amazing image of that object, which itself has its own NGC designation. It's 6164, which is this sort of stellar emission outburst. And so they say that these dragons are fighting over the egg, protecting it at the bottom. But again, I think that's incredible to think that that's up there, and we can't even see it with the naked eye. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and this is one of the few objects in the night sky where I totally get the common name. I can see the dragon heads and their bodies.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's really
I also
cool.
kind of see a squid in there on the right as well, or an octopus or something.
It could be a squid as well, but I like dragon, especially the one on the left. You can really see its kind of twisting body and its kind of flared ears and face and jaw. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. This was when I got this. This was pretty much, I knew this and the Eta Carina Nebula were the two things more than anything else that I wanted to try and image, because I thought these would be some of the things. Yeah, I've seen photographs of them, but never believed that I would be able to match that sort of quality. And whilst we've got a long way to go yet, especially with the color camera, I mean, I'm blown away by what's up there.
Yeah, you're definitely getting there, Ben. These are pretty impressive.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Okay, so you want to try for a galaxy? So yeah, let's go for M83. Oof, my guiding is all over the place. I don't know what's happening with the guide camera. I think let's just turn it off for now.
Yeah, that's how it goes with these things. I mean, you spend
just
as much time.
The fact that I can share the screen and it's working, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move to sort of the other side of the sky now. We're going to go to Messier 83, which is known as the Southern Whirlpool. So it is going to be very small, because obviously I've only got about a 400 millimeter zoom, or I think it's 337 mils, I think, only, but I did check it earlier on a 2-minute exposure, and we could certainly see a little bit of the structure there. So this is a really nice face-on barred spiral galaxy, as I said, very similar to the Whirlpool galaxy that you've got up there in the northern hemisphere. And yeah, we'll see what we can get.
Cool. Yeah, we've had an amazing few nights here in Jackson over the past week in the moonless sky. So the Whirlpool and Bode's galaxy, the Cigar galaxy have all been pretty incredible.
Well, this is, solving failed. Okay, let's go try again. Well, this is in the constellation of Hydra, so close to the tail of Hydra and Corvus and Crater the Cup as well. I think the problem is because I've got that filter on, we're not seeing very many stars. So I hope it's got enough to try and align itself. Otherwise, we'll see what we can get. I just got to go and double check its field of view. Hold on a sec.
Yeah. And so this is going to be the first object that we're going to look at outside of the Milky Way galaxy. So far, everything we've seen this evening for Ben, this afternoon for us in Wyoming, has been inside the Milky Way. A globular cluster, some emission nebulae, but now we're looking much, much farther away. Instead of tens of thousands of light years, we're looking millions of light years away. And hopefully we'll get an image here in just a moment. And Ben will have to tell us the distance to the southern pinwheel. I can't recall right now. It's one of the closest galaxies, I believe, to the Milky Way, putting it less than 100 million light years away. The closest, of course, is the Andromeda galaxy, just at 2 million light years. But there are several dozen galaxies within 100 million light years, and this is definitely one of those.
Yeah, I think so. I'm back again. It's about 16 million, I think. So 16 million light years away. So we're asking quite a lot with just a 400 mil scope. But let's give it a crack. Let's go for 3 minutes and see if how we go. But yeah, while it's doing that, let me just show you exactly where we're looking. So there's M83. You can see, so we're not too far away from Centaurus. Again, you can see Speaker there on the right as part of Virgo. And that is just the tail of Hydra that you can see coming onto the screen. There's Corvus, the Crow, Crater, the Cup.
Right.
I'm not sure how much of that you can see.
We get a little bit of that in the springtime. Yeah. Yeah, they're below the horizon for us now, but we've got Arcturus right now.
Yeah, so you've got Arcturus. There's not a great deal of stuff that I've found to look at in Arcturus in terms of deep sky objects, though. I don't know if you can suggest any. Obviously, we have got the Sombrero galaxy. I've had a look at a couple of times.
That's my favorite in that area of the sky. Yeah, Sombrero is pretty amazing, and then there's a wonderful group of galaxies in Virgo called Markarian Chain.
Yes.
Or is it chain or group or something?
Okay, yeah, the Markarian chain. Yeah, that sort of arc of galaxy. Yeah.
That's probably my favorite area of the springtime sky. It's just amazing. I think you can get to see as many as 10 galaxies in one field of view using a wide angle eyepiece on our telescopes, both elliptical galaxies and spiral galaxies in the same shot. It's phenomenal.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm just checking the stats on M83. Obviously, I can't remember all of them, but yeah, they're 15 or 16 million light years away. I reckon it's about 100,000 light years across, so not too dissimilar from us if you look at the standard figure of 120,000 light years across for the Milky Way. So it's potentially one of those ones that looks very similar to what we think we might look at. I hope I don't know why the guiding is all over the place, but I'm hoping we'll get enough from a 3-minute image, but we should certainly be able to see some of the detail in the arms. I don't think it'll be amazing. We'll have to zoom in a little bit, but I've got another picture queued, and I took a picture of this through the 10-inch as well with the camera, unguided, just 1-minute exposures as well, just to give you an idea of what is doable with amateur equipment. We'll have a look at that in a sec as well.
Nice. Yeah, we have an 11-inch that we use for astrophotography programs, unguided, and we just hook up a DSLR to the back of it, and we can do pretty decent 30-second to 1-minute exposures with that setup unguided. And it's nice because it doesn't require a long setup. You just put the telescope on, we align it to a couple stars, put the camera on and focus it, and really within 20 minutes we can be showing people some really nice images of galaxies and globular clusters, nebulae. So it's kind of cool to be able to do that so quickly. Oh yeah, we can see that. Nice.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. You
Yeah,
can see something in there. Just if
yeah,
we start it
absolutely.
up a little bit. So yeah, very small, but there we go. You can clearly see the bar spiral going through the center there
Yeah, that's
and
great.
the arm. So yeah, very good. Obviously 3 minutes is still fine. I don't see much movement there.
Yeah, one
So
big
yeah,
kind
very,
of,
very cool.
yeah, one large sweeping arm going up to the left and then down to the right, and then those inner arms and then the bar that you were talking about, Ben, are all fairly visible.
Yeah,
It's
we
so
could
cool.
definitely see there's I seem to remember, so I'm just checking here on my notes. This is how sad I made notes, but I remember there's that's right. Yes, it's the galaxy with the most supernova ever discovered within it. I think we've had 6 or 7.
Just recently there was
We're,
one, wasn't there?
I'm just trying to see
It was,
1983.
maybe it wasn't 83. No, it was something we could see in the northern hemisphere. There were a couple in one of the Messier objects. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly, but
Well,
anyways,
actually, just reading here, it says recently NGC 6946 passed this mark, and as of 2009, it holds the current record with a total of 9, and M61 has 6. The last one was in 2008. But I haven't got
interesting.
anything more recent than that.
Huh. Oh, very cool.
But yeah, awesome. So there you go. So we've managed to get a galaxy in there as well. So it's not the actually you could just about see some of the pink from the hydrogen there, because obviously there's
Absolutely. Yeah.
it is a bit of a starburst galaxy. We think it's interactive with something, and there is some new star formation happening there. Let's just see.
Yeah, I mean those red blotches are super cool because that brings us right back to what we started with, looking at those emission nebulae within the Milky Way. Those are
Yeah, there you
exactly
go.
the same type of objects that we started with.
So there's the picture. The top one is the picture that I took. The bottom one is a proper picture. You can see there's a bit more detail and some colors there, but you can clearly see the extent and the shape of those barred arms there, and the spin and the rotation of the galaxy there, which is yeah, very
Yeah,
cool to see. So the one on
fantastic.
the top was taken with the 10-inch, and that's how I've gratuitously plagiarized from the internet. I think it's either a Hubble image or a European Space Station image. You can see at the bottom, but I just like comparing those because they're not too dissimilar. I'm getting quite chuffed with what I can get, but I need to
Yeah,
play
I
with
mean,
the big scope more.
yeah, I mean, and if only you could get up above the atmosphere, you could get shots just like them too.
Well, one step at a time, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with
Yeah, so
eventually, adaptive optics are going to be available to the amateur astronomer. It may be a couple decades still, but eventually, the advanced amateur will be able to get Hubble Space Telescope quality images from the ground. We're not there yet, but that technology is coming.
well, let's hope. Yeah. So, I mean, what
Yeah.
you can do now, and trust me, I'm the biggest technophobe out here. I spend my time driving around in Land Rovers looking for animals. I don't do cables and strange coding and all this sort of stuff. So, with a little bit of assistance, I have to just say that the guys that I bought the stuff off, First Light Optics, were brilliant. They gave me so much after service help in getting everything connected and hooked up. And yeah, I'm incredibly chuffed. I've taken the scope out more and more these days, and very much getting into the photography side of things.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other objects that you wanted to have a look at. I'm not really sure how we're doing for time. I see it's 9:15 now. If you
yeah,
want, we
we should.
can wrap it up there, or it's entirely up to you.
I think we should probably wrap it up, but Ben, I think you're doing just fine with all the cables. So
We're
give
getting
yourself
there.
some credit. You're definitely doing a fantastic job with all this stuff. It's such a pleasure to connect with you again. We shouldn't let so much time lapse
No.
before the next time. Um,
Well, it's been had a lot of changes. I've moved house, and there's been quite a lot of things going on. So, and we've had some terrible weather here. So we had one of the wettest summers that we've had on record. And even though we're supposed to have no clouds and really stable conditions right the way through winter, we had about 60 millimeters of rain about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So the world is all over. And so I was out in Namibia. I don't know if you remember actually one of the last times we did this, where we were supposed to do an evening whilst I was in Namibia, and we had to
Yeah.
cancel it because in Namibia it was cloudy and raining. Well, I've just
Yeah.
come back from Namibia again, and we had sandstorms. I went all the way over there to
Wow.
do an event there, and they had the strongest winds they've recorded for nearly a decade. We had gusts of over
Wow.
100 kilometers an hour. We did about 45 minutes, and then we had to abandon it because of a sandstorm. The equipment was getting covered. I had people getting
Oh
their
no.
eyes sponged out back at the lodge because of the sand. And we were in the Nomib desert, dark sky reserve, crystal
Yeah.
clear, and a sandstorm. So I had terrible luck in Namibia.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but we had great luck tonight. So
Absolutely, yeah. Perfect conditions this evening. And I'm not
yeah.
shivering for the first time in a long time either.
I mean, and your equipment performed beautifully as well. Little hiccup with the guiding camera, but nothing we couldn't work with. So very impressive stuff.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. As I said, we're very fortunate in the Southern Hemisphere to have all of these amazing objects that we could have a look at. And we've seen, what, 5 or 6 of them this evening. And so there's plenty more. And maybe in a few months' time, a few more objects come into view, and we can explore some others.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think we have to wait a few months either. If there's some new stuff you can show us next month, I mean, maybe this becomes a monthly deal. I think there's probably interest. And for those of you watching out there, this is something that you can book as a private event as well with Ben. And so definitely keep that in mind. We do these public events to spread the love, the astronomy love. But if you have a group of students who you work with as a teacher, or some kind of a community center that you want to do a private event for with virtual stargazing, we can make that happen for you. So just let Ben or I know, and we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm actually I think it's early September. I actually contacted my old school back in England, and we've got a virtual evening set up, I think, for early September sometime. So I'm going to be, yeah,
Excellent.
casting to the airways back in the United Kingdom and showing them some great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and the timing works out really well here in the States as well.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
8 hour difference, I think, is perfect for kids in school. So when we get back into the next school year, this September, we should try to do some stuff with folks here in Jackson in the
Absolutely.
school district.
As you said, spread the astronomy love. That's what it's all about, eh?
That's right. Cool. Well, Ben, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate your time, and we will certainly be in touch and do this again sometime soon.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Thanks very much for having me on, and for all of those of you who have watched, I hope you've enjoyed it and it's opened your eyes, say, to some of the gems of the southern skies.
Indeed, it has. All right, Ben. Thanks so much, and we'll see you sometime down the road. All right. Take care.